Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon, evening. Good evening. So,
Good evening.
yeah, back after about 1 week's time. So we had a little delay in getting our team back because we had some issues from few of us. So today, as we discussed, so our plan is to discuss on the state-owned enterprises. So we stopped our last week chat on this topic, and we wanted to come into this. And just before we started our discussions, Finance Ministry released their the Public Enterprise Department actually released their half-year figures. So looking at those numbers, actually, that paved way or that basically justified why we are doing this discussion today. And so api balamu, and we got some good comments and mixed feedback from our last episode. So let's see how these things progress. We are trying to put some value additions, and we are like to see that some more people joining us also. So this is basically, so if you look at the global context, so what is happening is there are the state-owned enterprises are comprising of about 20% of the investments and 5% of employment. So this is basically the IFC projections or the computations, and they say that there are about 20% of 2,000 largest firms are basically state-owned enterprises. Now, when you look at the local context, what has happened is there is a total credit directed by 52 state-owned business enterprises by banks, which is about 920 billion. So Himara, out of this, what from the banking total books, this is about good 1/10, right? At least.
Yeah, no, close enough.
And then treasury support is given to state-owned business enterprises, that is 75 billion. And this is actually excluding the guarantees that has been given, right? So now what is happening is in Sri Lanka that most of the state-owned enterprises are borrowing from the banks based on state guarantees or the treasury guarantees, we call it. So this 75 billion is not that. This is the financing done by or the funding done by the treasury to support SOBs. So total turnover of state-owned business enterprises basically is around 1,804 billion, and that was about 1.5 times of the total government revenue. So this is why it is important for us to come into this chat and discuss. So basically, when we went through the annual report of Public Enterprise Department, this is where basically the place that we can gather some information. So state-owned enterprises in Sri Lanka are basically governed by the Finance Act as well as the Companies Act. So there are some industries that has been governing under Finance Act. Some companies are being established under Company Act number 7 of 2007. So basically there are 422 state-owned enterprises. And in Sri Lanka, there are two basic departments that deals with this. So that is, one is Public Enterprise Department, which counts for about 287 units, and National Budget Department, they control about 135 entities. Now, one thing that I observed on the perusal is that this information under the 135 information is not available actually. මේක කොහෙවත් පේන්න නම් publish කරලා නැහැ. I was trying to peruse as to see how their profitabilities are, but that number seems to be not being there, or there is no consolidated picture on that. Now, of the 287 that come into the Public Enterprise Department, the Public Enterprise Department has identified 54 strategic SOBEs, and then there are 233 other entities. So in Sri Lanka, basically, you will see energy, water, ports, banking, and insurance, and commuter transportation, aviation, and construction are the industries that is there. There is an interesting thing here. Now, although most of these departments are coming under Public Enterprises Department, if you look at almost all of these entities are also being governed by a line ministry as well. So, for example, now if you look at Ceylon Electricity Board, that's a strategic state-owned business enterprise, which would be counted by the Finance Ministry's Public Enterprise Department on certain lines, and there is a Energy and Electricity Ministry as well. So, petroleum also like that. So, there is a little bit of area. I think that the government will have to look into this area, because there may be certain kind of dotted line or some kind of duplication of work, or some kind of strategic decisioning has to take place in those lines. So this is the performance that we wanted to talk about. So if you look at for the last 4 months, basically for the first 4 months of the year, they are published only up to 30th April. So all the state-owned enterprises have made a loss of, these are about strategic state-owned enterprises, right? The 52, they have made a loss of 879 billion in total, right? So and out of that, out of the 52, 20%, 20 are loss making and 32 are profitable. But as you can see, the profit making institutes profits are not sufficient enough to serve the economy. මේක තමයි ප්‍රශ්නේ.
I have some inputs on here. Now, basically, when it comes to SOEs, my personal view is 100% we can't focus on profitability when it comes to all SOEs. Now, as we see, that we have identified 54 SOEs as strategically important. So some of those SOEs may be anyway not profit making. Now, because not profit making in the sense, my view is we won't be able to run those SOEs with the focus of
Profit alone.
what we call that maximizing the shareholders' profits sort of a focus would not work, I guess. Even when it comes to CPC and all that. So there are so many indirect benefits that the people are getting because those are going as SOEs. So those, but apart from those strategically important SOEs, all others, I think only option is that we need to see how we can make it profitable. When it comes to strategically important ones, it's always better to make them profitable, but having that in mind that even if it is not profit making, there are a lot of indirect benefits that the people of the country are getting by keeping them as SOEs. That's my personal view.
Yeah. Now coming back to
Guys,
your point,
I have a different view, because if I go like this, let's say what is a SOE? We have to understand what is SOE. So the definition says SOEs are legal entities doing commercial business, having a majority stake in the government, right? So 50% or above, or maybe the majority stake is with government. So they are also doing business, right? And as Charit, I have a different number as per Department of Public Enterprises. They say they have 527 SOEs. I'm not sure about your number, 422, 422, right? So
this is from the annual report of Public Enterprise Department, actually.
Okay, I just went through their website. It says 527, and they says, as you said, 287 governed by them, and rest is by National Department of National Government, right?
National
and out
budget.
of that,
Actually, I think the number that is under national budget is what it is not clearly been mentioned. So that is
it could be. And Charit, there is another categorization I found, right? So out of 527, they say 527 SOEs. So out of that, 55 is strategic. Then 287, they have a commercial interest. and 185 they have a non-commercial interest. So as Gajit said, yeah, 185 they might not make profits because they don't have the commercial interest, right? But I would say 287 plus 55 strategic SOEs, they should make profits because and the other things, if you look at, like, I think you have presented the latest numbers, the profits, performance, and everything. So we are not in a good position, right?
Now,
So
looking at
and
the
if you look
coming,
at the
yeah,
major areas like energy, airports, aviation, water, transport, construction, non-renewable energy, media, health, livestock, insurance, banking, and finance. So very less like areas are making profits, right? So we are at a loss here. So as you said, it's very important to revamp these SOEs. And if we can't make losses, so and also we have to identify why we want to have SOEs. So let's say if there is no interest by the private parties, the businessmen and all, and it has a national interest, then we should do, we should serve public through SOEs. But let's say CPC. So there are enough of private businesses who would want to do this business. So why SOE should be established to facilitate those services? Let's say transport board. Yes, for health services, yes, nobody would do that. So government involvement is required. So that is my stance.
Now, when it comes to CPC, let's say Hima, we privatize it, and I mean, giving the chance to the private sector, taking the Sapukaskanda refinery itself, like if it is run by the government, I mean, when it comes to basically Bhumitel wage ekak, they can sell around 100 rupees, right?
correct. Yeah,
When we
because
are
it becomes a
refining.
byproduct of the
Yeah.
refinery, actually. Yeah.
So if we take the indirect impact, like so many businesses are, using that, and there are so many indirect benefits. But if we privatize it, I mean, the company will make profit, but it will have a huge impact on the businesses which are depending on that, and so on and so forth. So that's why I
yes, Kajit,
yeah.
now it's like this, right? What my view is, now if you look at even globally, how a privatization would come in, especially on a strategic sector, would be that you need to have a strong government entity who will be putting that regulatory role. So how effective our regulators is a different question that we need to take into the perspective. Now, if you look at how telecom was privatized, was that now earlier the telecom was having a monopoly. So when they open up the market, there was a requirement to have a regulator. So that is how TRC was established. So the what a privatization would bring it. Now it's basically what you have to look at is from a strategic perspective, rather than from just to divest the burden that you have in your head. Now, even if you take Sri Lankan Airlines or petroleum, now those are the main loss makers here. And actually, what has happened is the other losses are basically have been neglected or are unseen for us because of the sizes of the losses that petroleum and Sri Lankan Airlines have incurred during the first 4 months of 2022. Basically, that's what it reflects. So what will happen is, as a country, you need to have a process where a proper regulatory system is in place and that regulatory roles are being properly executed. Then, for example, now අපේ දැන් Sri Lanka transport board එක තියෙනවානේ. Now in Sri Lanka there are about 10 regulatory authorities for transport. It is for bus transports alone, right? So that is National Transport Commission. And then you have 9 provincial transport authorities. So that all comes to 10. But none of these authorities will have a control over Sri Lanka Transport Board. So now, when you did certain kind of changes in the regulations, you are not making it a uniform application. Now, if you look at how the telecom works, now, although telecom is also competing with the private sector. Now, when telecom competes, they have to go through TRC. So there is one regulator for everyone. So there at times we have made certain laws, certain amendments into the processes. But what has happened is so that uniformity across the board is not applicable or not applied for that matter. Now it's simply even for the education system. So that is one of the areas that I think as a country we have to look at, because I also agree on the state on enterprises making losses. Yes, there are certain amount of losses at times you might have to absorb. But if you look at the profit making SOEs, you can see that these profits are not enough to absorb the loss making entities or compensate them.
Definitely,
So
the
Charlie,
number. I mean, the amount of losses are not acceptable in a not acceptable level. So it has to go down.
And also, Gajit, if you really look at how these entities or whatever based top profit making SOEs, what I see is, except for Sri Lanka Ports Authority, all the others are kind of into finance sector, right? And then you have the Development Lottery Board. You have then Bank of Ceylon, and then you have People's Bank, Sri Lanka Insurance, so National Savings Bank. It has trust fund. Actually, to be honest, employee trust fund should not be accounted here. It's a different way your pension fund. So pension fund it should not come under a profit making SOE.
Profit making entity. Yeah.
So it's people's money. So if you really look at, again, it's only the financial sector is doing good. And if we look at, when you take the context of Sri Lankan banking, we don't consider some of these specialized banks which are very small, right? When it comes to the banking sector. But when you look at the profits of those entities, they are very significant in terms of the Sri Lanka's state-owned enterprises.
Yeah.
So that
මෙහෙමයි චාරි දැන් මං කියන්නේ මෙහෙමයි දැන් ඔය ඔතන ඔක්කොම තියෙන්නේ කවුද tax payers money නේ වෙන කොහෙවත් සල්ලි නෙමෙයිනේ right so treasury has invested those money.
I have again an argument against this, right? In Sri Lanka, taxpayers' money is always less than the all the expenditures that the government make. ඇත්තටම බැලුවොත් අපි මේ ඔක්කොම ඇවිල්ලා මේ අපි කාගේවත් සල්ලි නෙවෙයි තියෙන අපි මේ කොහෙන්ද ණයට ගත්ත සල්ලි.
නෑ ඒක හරි. මම කියන්නේ අපේ එන්නේ ආදායම අපේ එන ආදායම ඕක විතරයිනේ.
නෑ ආදායම මං කියන්නේ ආදායමත් අපි මදිනේ කොහොමද? ඒතර ඇත්තට මේ හැමතැනම තියෙන taxpayerගේ money එකට එහා ගියපු දෙයක්.
හරි ඒක තමයි. එතකොට අපේ දැන් loss එක අපි දැන් SOE තියන් ඉන්න මොකද වෙන්නේ? අපේ loss එක වැඩි වෙන එක කරන්නේ. හැම අවුරුද්දෙම අපි loss එක වැඩි කර යනවා. right? එතකොට එක පැත්තකින් අපි loss එකත් address කරන්න ඕනේ. Then we have to address the borrowings. ඒ repayments ටික කරන්නත් ඕනේ. දෙපැත්තේ. right? මම කියන්නේ if you have sectors where you can open up, you can privatize. Maybe සමහර වෙලාවට privatize කරන්න ඕනෙත් නෑ. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ සමහර වෙලාවට දැන් losses තිබ්බට ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ assets වැඩි. right?
I have a question. ඔයා කියන්නේ යුගදන එක දුන්න එක හරි. යුගදන විය privatize කරපු එක හරි.
මම කියන්නේ those should be strategic.
මම කියන්නේ මෙහෙමයි.
Those should not be PPPs. What my view is, that's a country we should look at PPPs.
චරිත් මෙහෙමයි දැන් ඔය අපිට ප්‍රශ්න තියෙන්නේ CPC එකේ අපිට තියෙන්නේ අපේ කම්පිටිෂන් එකක් නැහැනේ. අපිට තියෙනවා approved අපේ තියෙන්නේ සිපෙට්කෝ එකයි අනිත් එක IOC එකයි. වෙන කාටවත් import කරන්න බෑනේ පෙට්‍රල්. මේ මං කියන්නේ oil import කරන්න බෑනේ ඔය දෙන්නගේ එක්කෙනෙක්ට. අපි එතනින් අපේ ඔක්කොම house station ඔය වැඩි demand එකක් නැති sheds ටික අපි maintain කරලා ඒ service එක දෙනවා. මම කියන්නේ ඒක එක්තරා දුරකට අපි දෙන්න ඕනේ. නැත්තම් එහෙම මේ මිනිසුන්ට තෙල් නැහැනේ. IOC ගිහිල්ලා ස්ට්‍රැටජික් ලොකේෂන් එකක් නැති තැනක ගිහිල්ලා ෂෙඩ් එක දාන්නේ නැහැනේ කීයටවත්. ඒක අපි ඒ කොස්ට් එක
හරි දැන් ඕක අපි let's apply this in the context of telecom හරිද මම දැකපු දේ ඔය කියන concept එක ඇතුලේ මම agree වෙන්නේ if you look at how telecom and Sri Lanka insurance have transformed in Sri Lankan presence හරිද කලින් දැන් ඔය දෙකම privatize වෙද්දී ඔය කියන විදිය ප්‍රශ්න තිබ්බනේ හම්බන්තොට තිබ්බේ නැහැ telecom හරිද normal lines තිබ්බේ නැහැ but it's that the challenge that they took and went into that extra mile හරිද මම හිතන්නේ මෙහෙමයි ඒක උනේ you had a local management and then you had a capital infusion and the strategic direction coming at the top from some foreign investors ඒක තමයි that balance has to be there මොකද if you look at now then ඕක මෙහෙමයි අපි ගම්පු before 94 වෙච්ච සමහර even after 94 there was a lot of privatizations now if you look at before 94 the economy ko open up කරපෙලේ 97 වල දැන් ඔය ගත්ත Tultex ඒ කියන්නේ Tultex ඔය කාබුල් Tultex කියන එක තුල්ලිරිය මේක ඊට පස්සේ Vatex කියන්නේ වේයන්ගොඩ තිබ්බ එක Putex ඒ ඔක්කොම මචං ඔය එක එකවට දුන්නානේ so what happened was ඒ වෙලේ උනේ we sold it as an entire unit ඒ වෙලේ ආපු investor කරේ you take it and you try to take that benefit say for within about 5 years and 6 years then they down the line they vanish ඔය කාබුල් ලංකා ඔය ඒවට උනේ ඒකනේ so what eventually happens is ඒගොල්ලෝ බලන්නේ exit points නේ දැන් හැබැයි if you look at from a perspective of a management person that's how you manage Sri Lankan Airlines and then most of the other investments as well නේ so ඒවයි what you saw was that it was more strategic ඕකටම තමයි අර සෙමා කියන organization එකත් හැදුවේ ඉතින් it didn't work that way but now if you look at now the government has a plan for Selandiva has a different approach ඒක more into asset
චරිත් මම කියන්නේ මෙහෙමයි දැන් sectors වල චරිත් ඔය කියන එක හරි ඒගොල්ලන්ට ඒ interest එක තියෙනවා ඊට පස්සේ ටික දවසකින් ඒගොල්ලෝ යනවා exit points බලන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ට එක්ක ඒක profitable නැති නිසා එක්කෝ ඒගොල්ලෝ එතන මොනොපොලි එකක් රන් කරන හින්දානේ right so මම කියන්නේ ඒකයි දැන් අපි open up කරලා තියෙන තාම IOC එකට විතරයි ඔතන competition එකක් හැදුනොත් විතරයි ඕක self regulate වෙන්නේ regulatory authority එකක් ඕනේ තමයි හරිද ඒක තියෙන්න ඕනේ මොකද දැන් මේක national interest එක ඔය කියන එක හරි strategic මේ මොකද oil නැති වුණොත් දැන් අපිට තේරෙනවානේ petrol නැති වෙලා තියෙන කට්ට ඒක අපිට තේරෙනවා ඒක අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම එක දිගට තියෙන්න ඕනේ හරි දැන් ඔතන IOC එක විතරක් හරි නැත්නම් තව එක්කෙනෙක් විතරක් ඔතන ඉස්සරහට කරොත් එහෙම වෙන්නේ එතකොට යාට ඕන විදිහට යා මේ මාකට් එක හැන්ඩල් කරනවා මැනිපියුලේට් කරනවා but I'm saying you have to bring in the competition you have to open up the market I was listening to a speech given by one of the economic advisors to last government 2015 to Mangala so he said why you don't allow individuals to import oil why you want only Sipetco to import oil why government should bring in your oil to Sri Lanka right so it's a very valid point දැන් චරිත පුළුවන් නම් චරිතයේ තෙල් ටික ගෙන්න ගන්න. නැත්තම් චරිත පුළුවන් නම් හරි නැත්තම් අපි කට්ටියට කාගේ හරි එකක් ගේන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඔය උතන කම්පිටිෂන් එක හැදෙනවනේ. කම්පිටිෂන් එක හැදුනහම ඔයා දෙන ගාන මම දෙන ගාන ඔයාගේ ක්වොලිටි එක මගේ ක්වොලිටි එක හැමෝම කන්සිඩර් කරනවා.
ඒකට
වෙලා තියෙන අපේ ඕපන් අප් කරපු සෙක්ටර්ස් ඔක්කොම
නෑ මෙහෙමයි ඒකට
අපේ ඕපන් අප් කරපු සෙක්ටර්ස් ඔක්කොම මොනොපොලිස්ට් වන්නේ. ඒකයි මම කියන්නේ අපි ප්‍රශ්නේ දැන් ඔය දැන් ප්ලස් ගජිත් අහ ප්‍රශ්න යුග්ග දන්නවි දුන්නද කියන එක ඒකේ වෙලා තියෙන්නේ අපි එක කන්ට්‍රි එකකටනේ ඔය දෙන්නේ අතාරින්නේ ඒ ෆුල් කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක අපි එක කන්ට්‍රි එකකට අතාරින්න මම කියන්නේ දැන් ඕක අපි පොඩි මේ කම්බිනේෂන් එකකින් අතෑරියොත් ඒ ඔය මාකට් එක ඇරියොත් එහෙම රටවල් 3-4ක එක්ක මල්ටිනේෂනල් කම්පැනි එකකට නැත්තම් එහෙම ඒ ඉන්ට්‍රස්ට් එක රටවල් කිහිපයක් අතර මේ ෂෙයා වෙන විදිහේ අපිත් කොටසක් තියාගෙන අතෑරියා නම් එතකොට ඕක එක්කෙනෙක්ට විතරක් පාලනය කරන්න බෑ. එතකොට ඔතන කම්පිටිෂන් එකක් ඇවිල්ලා ඒක රෙගියුලේට් වෙනවා කොහොමද? අපි රෙගියුලේටරි බොඩි එකක් ඉනිෂියලි තියන්න ඕනේ. දැන් අර මම අහගෙන හිටිය අනිත් එක තමයි ඔය ලංකා බෙල් ආපු කාලේ. වා කිව්වා වගේ ඕක ඕපන් අප් කරපු කාලේ. මම හිතන්නේ ලංකා බෙල් එහෙම සෑහෙන විදියට charges අඩු කරා. I think there had been a time where if you get a foreign incoming call, you will be paid, right? එහෙම කාලයක් තිබිලා තියෙනවා. ඒ මොකද ඔයා කම්පිටිෂන් එක අරින්න ඔයාගේ cost එක කොහොමද අඩු කරනවා. ඒකයි මම කියන්නේ මේ ඕනම sector එකක් මම කියන්නේ health sector එක still මට තව reservations තියෙනවා. It also to some extent you have to privatize it. General hospital එකේ වුණත් you can have paid wards. If you want, you can pay to those wards and get the services. ඒක වෙනම එකක්. But මම කියන්නේ CPC ඊළඟට maybe water board, maybe electricity, you can privatize. You can open up to the market. එතකොට එතන competition එකක් ආවොත්
yeah, even you can retain it with the government. It is not an issue. But what needs to happen is you need to look at, I think our next objective should be to look into one of the few of these areas, entities, and see how their structures of the balance sheets and how their income statements are. And also see where they are going wrong, or do a kind of ratio analysis. And see, මොකද දැන් මම අපි බැලුවොත් ලංකාවේ expenditures ඔයාගේ last 4 months වල සමුද්‍ර relief එකට වියදම් කරන්නේ 20 billion so එතකොට ඒ වගේ 30 times අපි loss එකක් ගන්නවා එක entity එකකින් අපි ඊට පස්සේ සර් අර deaths and injuries
health උත් එහෙමයි.
ඔව් death and injured soldiers අපි 13 billion. Medical supplies for government 19 billion. එතකොට fertilizer subsidy එකට අපිට යන්නේ 14 billion. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ ගාණක් අපි යද්දී අපේ මේ පැත්තෙන් loss making entities වල even Satosa is making a loss of about good 1.8 billion. For that is for 2018. So Raj 2022 වලත් ඒගොල්ලෝ have made about 100 to 50 million loss. මම කියන්නේ trading organization එකක් හරි අමාරුයි. I don't, then how does, because they are the biggest supermarket chain actually in Sri Lanka. Now when Keels and Kargis make profits, they are still making losses, so they can.
That's the thing. I have a very basic question, because honestly I don't have any clue on this. Now SOE kiyanne more than 50% ownership by the government in very basic understanding.
Actually most of these are
majority ne? Not 50% majority.
And 51 tamai, now almost on all these cases where the government is having 100%.
100%. එතකොට
50
but water board එකෙහි පොඩි stake එකක් එළියේ නැද්ද?
No one has. Except for Milko. There is Amul has some stake, Indian Amul, but I am not sure whether they are having it still.
So my question is, when the 51% or 100% stake is with government to make losses, and as soon as we privatize it to be profitable, monada thiyena pulan reasons, if we can discuss one or two. I mean,
probably the management styles. Probably the management styles and making the correct pricing decisions and bringing the process efficiencies. Now, if you look at how telecom transformed was, they brought in new technology. මොකද අර දැන් මෙහෙමයි දැන් ගාමන්ට් එකේ තියෙදි තියෙන ලොකුම ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි you don't have the capacity to make new investment. මොකද දැන් අපේ ගාමන්ට් එක full මේවා වෙලා නින්නේ මේ full stuck නේ. So the issue එක තියෙන්නේ දැන් ගාමන්ට් එකට බෑ තව funding කරන්න. ඉතින් එතකොට අලුත් investments එන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් අපිට හිතමු දැන් මේ සරල දෙයක් අපි කියමු දැන් water board එකේ හරි electricity board එකේ හරි meters digitize කරන්න කියමු. ඕ නැත්නම් ඒක app based කරන්න කියමු. ඒකට ඕන infrastructure එකට ඕන investment එක බෑ කරන්න ඒගොල්ලන්ට බෑ. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝ already loss making. So the government is thinking මේක අපිට කරන්න මේකට වියදම් කරන්න සල්ලි නැහැ. එතකොට ඒකට යන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක තමයි ඒ වගේ අනිත් එක තමයි දැන් ඕකේ තියෙන bureaucratic nature එක. ඔය organizations පුරු වෙලා නැහැ performance driven environments වලට. මොකද ඇත්තටම අපි කිව්වොත් දැන් ඔය loss making entities ඔක්කොම bonus ගෙවනවා. හරිද? Most of them, right? Even whether they make profits or losses, they are being paid a bonus. They are not used to that culture.
No, Charit, and as you rightly said, management එකේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. Plus මම ඊට උඩින් කියන්නේ ඔතන accountability එක ගන්න කවුරුත් නැහැ. Because this is not their money. This is public money, right? Public money that is invested in those SOEs. So the shareholder is the finance ministry, right? ඔය SOE boards වල මගේ understanding එකේ විදිහට there's no presence, I mean nobody from the finance ministry is sitting in those SOE
They are
boards.
sitting. Each board has 2 finance ministry members. That is a mandate, right? So that in ඔක්කොම මේක දාන්න
ඒක තමයි එහෙමනම් මංගෙන් හරි සිට් කරනවා නම් කෝ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ඒ ඉන්ට්‍රස්ට් එක ඒක නෑනේ. දැන් ඔය
Point over,
finance ministry එකේ සල්ලි ටික SOE එකේ invest කරාට පස්සේ finance ministry කිව්වත් ඉතින් ඕක අන්තිමට
we'll move into the next session, right? And I will tell what is exactly happening there.